Good afternoon. My name's John Levy. It's my distinct privilege to serve as the 10th chair of the board of the Legal Services Corporation. And on behalf of our outstanding LSC board, I welcome you to this special forum on increasing access to justice. Our forum today will have a special focus on the critical role that civil legal aid plays in housing matters. As former Michigan representative and co-chair of the bipartisan Congressional Access to Civil Legal Services Caucus, Fred Upton observed, and I quote him, "Our mission is to support giving every single American a fair shot in legal proceedings. There are times when a good lawyer is a necessity, when their assistance is the difference between eviction and keeping your home." Well, today we will be very privileged to hear remarks from two distinguished speakers, Judge Stephanie Dawkins Davis of the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, and Elizabeth Clement, the immediate past Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court and the current President and CEO of the National Center for State Courts. We will hear recorded remarks because Congress is in session from members of Congress who could not be with us in person, including your Senator Gary Peters, Representatives Helen Scholten, Debbie Dingell, and Kristen Rivet. Our program also features 3 illuminating panels, and we'll hear directly from a client who has benefited from legal aid here in Michigan. The first panel, moderated by Jennifer Bentley, Executive Director of the Michigan State Bar Foundation, will focus on local eviction diversion programs, legal aid leaders, a court facilitator, and a property manager will discuss how their collaboration has helped to keep Michiganders in their homes. The second panel, moderated by OSC President Ron Flagg, includes a legal aid leader, a director from a wonderful Detroit foundation, and they will describe how civil legal aid keeps families in their homes across generations. And the final panel, moderated by our distinguished board member Robert Gray, features prominent local business leaders discussing why access to justice should be a priority for all of us, including the private sector. Well, as we gather here today, we're nearing the end of LSC's 50th anniversary year. The Legal Services Corporation was established on July 25th, 1974, when Richard Nixon signed the LSC Act to, quote, help provide equal access to the system of justice in our nation and provide high-quality legal assistance to those who would be otherwise unable to afford adequate legal counsel. Of the corporation LSC Act created, Nixon said, "Here, each day, the old, the unemployed, the underprivileged, the largely forgotten people of our nation may seek help," unquote. Well, 50 years later, as you all know all too well, they're still seeking help, and LSC and its grantees across the country are providing it. In fact, during these 5 decades, our extraordinary national network of providers has helped nearly 75 million low-income Americans with their civil legal problems. And LSC has become the nation's single largest funder of civil legal aid, supporting 130 legal aid providers with 900 offices, every county, state, as well as the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories. And these organizations provide legal services for more than 5 million low-income Americans annually, including more than 1 million children, over 200,000 survivors of domestic violence, nearly 45,000 veterans. 16% of Americans currently qualify for LSC-funded assistance because their household income is at or below 125% of the federal poverty guideline, and unfortunately, as you likely know, LSC's 2022 Justice Gap report revealed that low-income Americans do not receive any or enough legal help for 92% of their substantial civil legal problems. When you consider that that report also found that 74% of low-income houses experience at least one civil legal problem a year, and 39% whether 5 or more, well, you see the magnitude of the challenge. And this shortfall in legal assistance has dire consequences. Recent studies show that people with legal representation are 6.5 times more likely to win their cases than those without, and in housing court in this country, if you're represented, you have a 90% chance of a favorable outcome, but if you aren't, you have a 90% chance of being evicted. And equally of concern, recent studies show that in state civil courts across this country, 50 to 75% of the cases, one or both parties are unrepresented by counsel. Well, the chronic underfunding of LSC has helped to fuel this crisis in civil legal aid and has forced many of our grantees to turn away as many eligible applicants as they're able to help because of a lack of resources. And in addition to seeking more LSC funding, LSC and its grantees have launched a series of initiatives over the past few years to try and help narrow the justice gap. For the past 25 years, LSC has convened the only national conference focused exclusively on the use of technology to address the civil legal needs of low-income Americans. The first such conference was attended by 32 individuals. This year, and I was there, more than 700 attended, and what a conference it was. LSC has also convened 3 technology summits, resulting in a highly acclaimed blueprint for using innovative technology to transform the delivery of civil legal services. And of course, LSC's Technology Initiative Grants Program has played a major and direct role in helping to develop legal tech innovations since it was founded in 2000. And during this period, the Tech Initiative Grant Program, the TIG program, has awarded 924 projects across the country, totaling more than $90 million. And this funding has been used by our grantees to enhance online resources for self-represented litigants, making existing tools more mobile-friendly, deploying AI to streamline intake and client services, and more. Increasing the role of private lawyers in civil legal aid can also help to narrow the justice gap. Well, I'll have more to say about that at the pro bono reception, so stay tuned. LSC grantees are also collaborating with and learning from the medical community. 90 grantees now participate in some form of medical legal partnership. That's about 2/3 of the organizations we fund, and LSC has also raised private funds. And thank you to so many here who are helping as a part of that effort to modestly complement our congressional field grant appropriation to support important new initiatives assisting our grantees in educating the country about the gravity of the crisis in access to justice. And among these are, of course, 2 comprehensive justice gap studies, the most recent, 2022, the Rural Summer Legal Corps, which places 45 law students with LSC-funded civil legal aid providers in rural locations each summer, a Midwestern disaster preparedness project to develop coordinated plans between disaster preparedness organizations and legal services providers. A legal aid curriculum for public librarians, often the first people low-income folks consult with when seeking to find a legal aid provider. National task forces addressing and providing guidance and best practices for our grantees, including the civil legal aid implications of natural disasters, opioid abuse, veterans issues, housing insecurity, and the need for more effective pro bono. Task forces focused on evictions and rural justice challenges are completing their work this year. Quarterly forums on access to justice, like this one, showcasing the important work of our grantees and underscoring the crisis in civil legal aid, providing periodic training for executive directors and CFOs of all of our grantees. And just a few weeks ago, LSC released a compelling study finding that civil legal aid yields an average positive return of $7 for every $1 invested in legal aid, and that's because civil legal aid prevents and solves legal problems before they lead to even more costly public expenditures on things like emergency medical care, law enforcement, and shelters. And the study also found that legal aid helps improve family stability, leading to their increased participation in their local economies and reduced reliance on other forms of assistance. Well, 30 years ago, Congress appropriated $400 million for LSC. Although we appreciate that the congressional continuing resolution for this fiscal year extended LSC's funding of $560 million through September, much more is needed to close this significant justice gap after years of serious underfunding. And in fact, our bipartisan LSC board voted unanimously to request from Congress $2.1 billion for LSC's fiscal year 2026 budget. Well, that's why it's particularly alarming to me, our board and our grantees, that the administration's proposed budget for fiscal year 26 proposes to end federal funding of LSC. Just today, the House Appropriations Committee proposed a budget of $300 million for fiscal year 26, a 46% cut to LSC's funding. Well, this would return LSC's budget to a 1999 level and would result in 3 million fewer Americans receiving civil legal services. Well, while we're encouraged that in fact that House committee did not follow the administration's proposal to eliminate LSC funding, we remain hopeful that the Senate will prioritize LSC in their appropriations bill, and ultimately we see an increase in LSC's budget. We once again strongly encourage and implore Congress to do just that, significantly increase the funding of LSC and its grantees. In particular, as the nation prepares for its 250th anniversary, I can't help but reflect on our country's founders' belief that ensuring access to justice was the foundation of a just society. Thomas Jefferson called it the most sacred of the duties of a government. George Washington believed it to be the firmest pillar of good government, and James Madison called justice the end of civil society. As Michigan's own remarkable current Chief Justice Megan Kavanaugh compellingly put it in a recent letter to Congress supporting LSC's funding, and I quote, "The promise of justice must be real to all who seek it. Justice for only those who can afford it is neither justice for all nor justice at all, unquote. Well, you have to forgive me a personal reflection, because in 1975, Michigan's own and our country's 38th President of the United States, Gerald R. Ford, asked my father, Edward Levy, to serve as the nation's 71st Attorney General. And as my father concluded his service to our country in that role, in his farewell address to the United States Department of Justice, he reminded us that the values upon which our system of justice is founded can never be won for all time. They must always be won anew. Well, during these past nearly 51 years, LSC and its 130 grantees have done their very best to win anew our nation's foundational promise of liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us here today, and thank you for all of your support for equal justice here in Michigan and across our country.